My wife cheated with her boss, then manipulated me into signing over our $450, $0 house, and now she's claiming I owe her $200, $0 in hidden debts. They're all a lie, but the courts might believe her. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing out my life story like some kind of cautionary tale. But here I am, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that life can change in a second, especially when the person you trust the most turns out to be the biggest liar of all. It all started out like any other marriage. My wife, Lisa, and I had been together for 8 years. We had a nice house, decent jobs, and a life that looked pretty solid from the outside. She was the kind of woman who always knew how to turn on the charm, beautiful, confident, a little bitchy at times, but I loved her. Or at least I thought. I did. Looking back now, I see the signs were there all along, but I was too blind or too comfortable to notice. She started working late more often, claiming it was just her boss pushing for extra hours, but I never really paid much attention. I trusted her, or at least I wanted to. She would come home exhausted, smelling different, and sometimes she'd be unusually secretive about her phone. I'd catch her deleting messages or turning her screen away when I looked over. Nothing concrete, but enough to make me suspicious. Then came the little things, missing money from the joint account, odd texts that she'd quickly hide when I entered the room, and her suddenly changing attitude towards intimacy. She'd brush me off more often, say she was stressed or tired, but I could feel the distance, like she was already somewhere else mentally. Still, I told myself it was just work stress or her period or whatever excuse I could come up with. One day, I decided to check her phone. I know, it's not exactly a proud moment, but I was desperate. I had a gut feeling she was hiding something, and I needed to know, so I snuck into her purse while she was in the shower and grabbed her phone. I unlocked it, expecting maybe some harmless texts, but what I found was a string of messages that made my stomach drop. There was a conversation with her boss, Mark. They were talking about meeting up after hours, secret weekends, and not letting anyone find out. The texts weren't just professional, they were flirtatious, loaded with innuendos, and some of the pictures she sent were clearly meant for him. I felt my knees go weak. That's when I realized she'd been cheating on me for months, maybe longer. My wife was screwing her boss, and she'd lied to my face every single day. I confronted her that night. I showed her the messages, the photos, everything I'd found. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She looked surprised, then angry. She said I was invading her privacy, that I was paranoid, that I was overreacting. She told me Mark was just a friend, that I was jealous and insecure. She called me crazy and accused me of spying on her because I didn't trust her. That's when the floodgates opened. I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and pure betrayal. How could she lie to me like this? How could she cheat with her boss of all people, someone I'd trusted to help us build a life? The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who was manipulative, selfish, and willing to destroy what we had for a quick thrill. In that moment, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to decide what to do next. I was angry, yes, but I was also hurt, deeply hurt. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made, the late nights at work, the weekends spent fixing the house, the dreams we shared. And now I saw it was all a lie. Lisa had been planning this affair right under my nose, and she'd even convinced me to sign over the house, our house, the one we'd built together. All that money, all those years, just a pawn in her game. I needed to think. I needed to plan, because I knew with absolute certainty that this wasn't just about the affair. It was about how far she was willing to go to manipulate me, to lie, and to ultimately take everything I cared about. I didn't know what her next move would be, but I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face when I confronted her, her eyes flickering with guilt, then shifting into that icy, bitchy glare she always used when she thought she was winning an argument. It was like she was already planning her next move, and I was just a pawn in her game. I started digging deeper. I needed to understand how she'd managed to manipulate me into signing over our house. She'd always been good at playing the victim, twisting stories, making herself seem innocent. That's exactly what she did when I brought up the house. She claimed she was worried about our finances, said she needed to protect us from some imagined debts, and somehow convinced me that signing the paperwork was the only way to save us. Looking back now, I realize how she played me. She knew I'd never suspect her of outright theft, so she spun a story about how she was just trying to help. Meanwhile, she was secretly funneling money into her affair with Mark, I'm sure of it. That house, our biggest asset, she turned into her bargaining chip, her leverage. I found a few bank statements hidden in her email drafts, nothing too obvious, but enough to confirm she'd been draining accounts, hiding money, and possibly incurring debts she never told me about. When I confronted her about the so-called hidden debts, she looked me dead in the eye and told me I owed her $200, that I'd been secretly borrowing money behind her back. That was a bald-faced lie. There were no debts, just her lies, her manipulations, and her outright theft of our savings. But here's the thing, she's good at lying. She's a master manipulator. She spun stories about how she was forced to do things because I was so controlling, so jealous. That I'd been abusive in some way, that I'd never really cared about her. She painted herself as the victim, even as she was sneaking around with Mark. She told everyone that I was trying to ruin her, that I was an angry, paranoid husband who couldn't see how much she needed her boss. I knew I had to act fast. I started gathering evidence, texts, emails, bank statements. I even hired a private investigator to confirm my suspicions about Mark. The guy was definitely cheating on his wife too, so it wasn't just my wife. It was a whole web of lies and deception. I also talked to a lawyer trying to understand my options. The house was in my name, but she had somehow convinced me to sign over my rights. I felt like a fool. One night I found her on the phone again, whispering into it in the living room. I snuck up behind her and she froze when she saw me. Her face twisted into that familiar bitchy sneer. I grabbed her phone and saw a message from Mark, something about meeting again tonight, hiding from her husband and making it worth her while. That was the moment I snapped. I told her I knew everything, that I had proof, that I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. Her reaction. She started crying, fake tears, I could tell. She told me I was crazy, that I was accusing her of things she didn't do, and that I was jealous because she's more successful than me. She called me paranoid, said I was losing my mind, and even claimed I was the one who was cheating behind her back with some secret mistress. That was the last straw. I saw through her lies, her manipulation. I realized she was trying to turn everything around and make me look like the bad guy, but I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. I knew I had to get out, get my head clear, and protect what was left of my life. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak. She'd taken everything, my trust, our house, the illusion of a happy marriage, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I was done being the victim of her games. I decided I'd fight for my rights, for my sanity, and for whatever was left of what I thought was my life. Right now, I'm just trying to get through each day. I've filed for divorce, and I'm working with a lawyer to undo the damage she's tried to do legally. But honestly, I don't know what's worse, the betrayal or the fact that I ever believed in her. Trust is shattered and I'm left picking up the pieces. I know one thing, I'll never let her manipulate me again. After I gathered enough evidence and made the decision to go through with the divorce, everything started moving faster than I expected. The legal process, the confrontation, even the fallout with our friends and family, it all hit me like a freight train. I never thought I'd be the guy fighting to reclaim his life after being blindsided like this, but here I was, trying to piece myself back together. The moment I handed everything over to my lawyer, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had some clarity, some proof, and a plan to cut her out of my life. Dread because I knew she'd fight dirty. She always did. Lisa wasn't just manipulative. She was ruthless when it came to protecting herself and her lies. She had already started spinning stories to anyone who would listen, saying I was crazy, that I'd become violent, that I was trying to ruin her reputation. She'd always been good at twisting facts, and now she was trying to turn the tables on me. She claimed I'd been controlling, jealous, and even accused me of cheating, just like she always did when she wanted to deflect blame. But I had the evidence and I was prepared. I knew she'd try to manipulate the court, the lawyers, everyone. That's why I made sure to document everything: her texts, her emails, the bank statements, even her suspicious phone calls. One of the first surprises came when she started claiming I owed her money, $200, zero in hidden debts she'd conveniently discovered. She insisted I'd been secretly borrowing behind her back, trying to hide it from her. The thing is, I had never borrowed a dime without her knowing. The debts were fabricated, another lie designed to scare me into giving her more money or to make herself look like the victim. I showed the lawyer all the evidence I had, and he told me that her claims were baseless. Still, I knew how convincing she could be, so I prepared for her to try and spin it even more. Then came the part where she tried to manipulate the house. Remember, I signed over our $450, $0 home because she convinced me. It was the best thing to do at the time. She told me it was to protect us from some supposed debts I owed her, but it was all part of her plan to control the situation. Now she was claiming that I abandoned her and that I owed her half the value of the house. Another lie. She'd been secretly trying to refinance it, probably to drain whatever equity was left, and she'd even hired her own lawyer to pressure me into signing papers I didn't fully understand. Meanwhile, I was documenting her every move. I hired a private investigator again to keep tabs on her, especially since I suspected she was still talking to Mark or other men. I found out she'd been meeting up with Mark secretly even after I caught her. They'd been texting, sneaking around, making plans to meet. That confirmed she was still lying, still manipulative. I confronted her again, and her reaction was classic. She called me paranoid, jealous, and said I was losing my mind. But I didn't care anymore. I had the proof and I was ready to fight back. The court hearings were intense. She showed up with her fake tears, her manipulative stories, trying to paint herself as the victim. She claimed I was abusive, controlling, and that I'd done her wrong. She told the judge I'd been harassing her and accused me of trying to ruin her reputation. I sat there calm, with copies of her texts and emails ready to refute every lie. I could see her faltering under the weight of her own deception. In the end, I managed to get the house into my name again. The judge saw through her lies, thankfully, and I retained ownership. But the damage was done. She'd already spent the money I'd worked so hard for, manipulated me into signing papers, and tried to make me look like the villain. Her last-minute attempts to claim I owed her money or that I was cheating only confirmed how desperate she was to hold on to control. I started to realize that the biggest lesson here was trust, how fragile it is, how easy it is to lose if you're not careful. Lisa was a master at deception, and I was her mark. But I also learned that I had the strength to fight back, to stand my ground, and to reclaim what was mine. It wasn't easy and it wasn't painless, but I refused to let her win. Now I'm living day by day, trying to rebuild my life without her lies hanging over me. The house is mine again, and I've cut all contact. I know she'll keep trying to manipulate and twist stories, but I've learned my lesson. Never again will I be so blind. Never again will I let someone like her control my life. The betrayal cuts deep, but I'm still standing. And I will keep fighting to make sure she can't do this to anyone else. The aftermath of everything hit me harder than I expected. I thought once I had the house back, the legal battles settled, and her lies exposed, I'd start feeling some kind of relief. But honestly, the pain and anger lingered. Every time I looked at the house, I saw her face, that bitchy sneer, and her lies echoing in my head. It was like I was stuck in this fog of betrayal that I couldn't shake. I started therapy, not because I wanted to, but because I knew I needed to understand how I let her manipulate me so thoroughly. Talking to someone who wasn't emotionally involved helped me see things clearer. I realized I'd been chasing a fantasy, believing in the perfect marriage, the woman I thought I knew. Turns out, Lisa was a master at hiding her true self. She was a bitchy, manipulative woman who used sex and lies to get what she wanted, and I was too blind to see it, caught up in the idea of what should be. The most shocking thing was how she kept trying to manipulate the situation even after I'd filed for divorce. She'd call me crying, claiming she was so sorry and still loves me, trying to guilt me into taking her back. She'd send long, fake-sounding messages about how she realized her mistake, how she'd change, how she was willing to do anything to fix things. But I knew better. I knew she was just trying to reassert control. One day, she showed up at my workplace unannounced. I was stunned. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red like she'd been crying all night. She begged me to give her another chance, saying she'd change everything, that she'd stop lying, that she'd be the wife I deserved. I just looked at her, cold and detached. I told her to leave, that I wasn't interested in her apologies anymore. I told her the truth, that I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman who'd lie and cheat her way to the top. The thing that really tore me apart was the realization of how much I'd lost: my trust, my sense of security, even my self-esteem. I used to think I was a decent guy, someone who worked hard, paid the bills, tried to keep everything together. Now I felt like a fool for ever trusting her. I had to rebuild my confidence piece by piece. I also started working on my finances more carefully. I found out she'd been hiding debts, draining accounts, and even trying to refinance the house without my knowledge. I hired a financial advisor, and we started sorting through everything. I learned she'd been secretly borrowing money, probably to fund her affair with Mark, and trying to pin it all on me. She'd even forged my signature on some documents, trying to make it look like I owed her money. The emotional toll was brutal. Every day was a struggle to trust again, to believe I could move past this. I kept thinking about how she lied to me, how she manipulated me into signing over the house, and how she was now claiming I owed her money. It all felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, but I knew I had to keep going. I had to stay strong, for my own sake. I started to reconnect with friends I'd pushed away because I was so wrapped up in our perfect life. Some of them were surprised, others just shook their heads, saying they saw the signs but didn't want to interfere. I realized I'd been so caught up in her lies that I ignored the warning signs, ignored my gut. Now I was paying the price. But I also learned an important lesson: never ignore your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. The biggest challenge now is moving forward without her. I know she's still out there, probably trying to manipulate her way back into my life, but I refuse to let her. I've changed my phone number, blocked her on social media, and told my family and friends not to let her get to me. I want to rebuild my life, but it's not easy. Every day is a battle to trust again, to believe I can be happy without all this chaos. What I've come to realize is that betrayal doesn't just hurt, it changes you. It makes you question everything, even yourself. But I also see now that I have a choice. I can let her destroy me, or I can pick up the pieces and rebuild stronger. I choose the latter. I want to believe there's still good in the world, still trust worth earning again. It's going to take time, but I'm determined to move past this, to find a new normal, and someday, maybe even find happiness again. Honestly, I never thought I'd get to this point, standing here, still breathing, still trying to piece my life back together after everything Lisa put me through. But I've learned some hard lessons along the way, and I want to share what I've figured out because maybe someone else out there needs to hear it. The biggest thing I've realized is that betrayal cuts so deep it can change your entire outlook. I used to think I was a decent, stable guy who trusted the people he loved. Turns out I was naive. Lisa's lies, her manipulations, they shattered that trust into a million pieces. The house, the money, the fake tears, her constant lies, it all added up to one thing: I had to rebuild from scratch, emotionally and financially. One of the toughest parts has been forgiving myself. I kept blaming myself for not seeing the signs, for being too trusting. But I've come to understand that some people are just good at hiding who they really are. Lisa was a master at it. I was blind because I loved her, because I wanted to believe the best. Now I know that sometimes loving someone means knowing when to walk away, not when everything's perfect, but when your gut screams that something's wrong. I also learned the importance of protecting yourself. I wish I had hired a lawyer sooner, started documenting everything right from the start. I wish I'd trusted my instincts more instead of ignoring the little red flags. That's why I'm telling anyone reading this, if you even suspect something isn't right, don't ignore it. Get proof. Talk to a lawyer. Protect your assets and your sanity. Because once the trust is broken, it's almost impossible to repair. Financially, I've had to start over. I've changed banks, closed accounts she had access to, and started building a new credit profile. I also learned how easy it is for someone like her to manipulate legal documents, to forge signatures, and to drain accounts. I had to get a forensic accountant involved to untangle the mess she left behind. It's been exhausting, but it's necessary. Emotionally, I'm still healing. There are days I feel angry, days I feel broken, and days I wonder if I'll ever fully trust again. But I hold on to the fact that I survived. I'm still standing. I've started dating again, not because I want to jump into something new, but because I realize I deserve to be happy, to be loved for who I am, not who someone else pretends I should be. The biggest lesson I want to pass on is this: trust your gut. No matter how convincing someone is, no matter how much you love them, listen to that voice inside. If it's telling you something's wrong, pay attention. Because once someone betrays you, it's hard to see the world the same way again. But you can rebuild. You can come out stronger. I've also learned that revenge isn't the answer. I thought about going after her legally, exposing her lies, making her pay for what she did. But in the end, I realized that giving her that power would only keep me tied to all this pain. The real revenge is living my life without her, proving that I can be happy on my own. That's what I'm working on now, finding myself again and making peace with what happened. So if you're reading this and going through something similar, know this: you're not alone. It hurts, it's messy, and it feels like your whole world is falling apart. But you're stronger than you think. Trust in yourself, protect what's yours, and don't let anyone, especially someone you loved, destroy your sense of worth. Because in the end, the only person who can truly rebuild your life is you. And trust me, you can do it. Looking back now, I realize that the biggest lesson I've learned isn't just about betrayal or deception. It's about resilience. About how, even after the worst possible betrayal, someone you trusted, someone you loved, turning out to be a complete liar, you can still find a way to stand tall. I've come to understand that life throws curveballs, and sometimes those curveballs hit hard enough to knock you down. But you have a choice: stay down or get up and fight back. I've had to rebuild my entire sense of security from scratch. The house, the money, the trust, all of it was shattered, and honestly, I thought I'd never recover. But I did. Slowly, painfully, I managed to piece my life back together. I cut ties with Lisa completely. I changed my routines, my phone number, my social media. I refused to let her manipulate me anymore, and I refused to let her define my future. The court case was a victory, but it was just the beginning. The real victory was reclaiming my peace of mind and my dignity. Now I focus on myself. I work hard, I reconnect with old friends, and I spend time doing things I love, things that remind me I'm still a good person, still capable of happiness. I've learned to trust again, but more carefully. I don't look for perfection anymore, I look for honesty. I keep my guard up, not out of suspicion, but out of respect for myself. I refuse to be blindsided again. Most importantly, I've come to understand that sometimes love isn't enough. You can give your all, but if the other person isn't honest or committed, it's all for nothing. My marriage with Lisa was built on a lie, and I can't rebuild on a foundation of deception. So I've chosen to let go. Not easily, not without pain, but I've chosen to move forward without her. The scars will stay with me, sure. Betrayal leaves a mark. But those scars remind me of my strength. They remind me that I survived the worst and came out the other side. I'm not perfect, and I still have days when I feel broken, but I know I'll be okay. I'm learning to trust myself again, learning to believe that I deserve happiness and honesty. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: don't ignore your instincts. When something feels off, listen to that voice. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to fix. But you can rebuild your life better, stronger, wiser. It's not easy and it's not quick, but it's worth it, because at the end of the day, the only person who truly matters is you. and you owe it to yourself to live a life rooted in truth, respect, and self-worth. Lisa's gone, her lies exposed, her manipulation thwarted. I've learned that revenge isn't about getting even, it's about reclaiming your life and your dignity. And that's exactly what I've done. I may never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I'm finally free.